All right, and welcome to the latest episode of Creators Talking, the show where I do once or twice a month where I bring on the creators of varying degrees and talk to them about their work. And today I'm really happy. I've got someone whose work I've been following for a little while now, in part through a accidental encounter, which we'll get into at the time. But I'm just going to bring him straight on. You'll know him from T-Bird and Throttle, Dead at 17, Black Harvest. It's the one and only Mr. Josh Howard.
Hello.
I'm really thrilled to have you here because, like I said, I've been following your work for a little while now, and I'll get into the accidental encounter later because I'm wondering if you'll remember it.
Okay.
But I always like to start these little chats right at the beginning. So, who was Josh Howard before he was the writer and artist we know now?
Who was I? I was just a kid from a small town of 3,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
I was definitely an outcast because I was into comics and you know the nerdy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This was back in the 80s when it was not popular to be a nerd. It was
Yeah.
not like it is now. So
Carry on, sorry. I was going to say I was a child of the 80s and 90s, and
okay.
I remember when my mum first started buying me comics from my local newsagents. That was how I got into it. But please carry on.
Yeah, so I just had a passion for drawing and for art and those type of things. And despite the pressures all around me, I stayed with it. And I went off to art school for computer animation, actually. Even though it's not
Mm-hmm.
what I really wanted to do, there was not really a school, at least that I was aware of, that was for comics. It's not really a
Yeah, I've
you
heard that
know,
before. I
yeah,
have a friend who he does comic book art in his spare time. I don't think he's ever gone serious with it, but they had to find him a course for it, and he remembered getting put off it at the time, and I was like, "Why? Your art's fantastic." And the teacher, who was a woman, actually came onto him, and that was why he sort of went, "Yeah, I'm going to go do something else." And I thought, I've never heard that before, but yeah. But carry on. Sorry.
oh no, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, so I was doing that, and then realized I did not want to do computer animation.
Mm-hmm.
So I dropped out of art school, and then decided I'm going to pursue become a comic book artist. And I just worked at that until I finally got in with a local publisher called Viper Comics, who was just starting out. And yeah, that's brings us to that's before becoming a professional. That takes us up to there. So
Because you write as well, don't you? You are a writer artist, as
yes,
they say. When did
yes.
you first start writing? Was that before the art or around about the same time?
Yeah, I mean, I was in school. I was always did pretty good in like creative writing and in English and reading and all that stuff. So it was always something that was kind of there, and I was always more interested in not just drawing, but
Mm-hmm.
creating my own stories. I don't think I realized it growing up. That was what I was, you know, gearing towards. But got very tired very quickly of just drawing the submissions for Marvel, DC, drawing their characters. That was felt very empty to me anyway. I wanted to like be in control of what I was doing and
Mm-hmm.
create my own stuff. So it just kind of naturally, I guess, happened, and um, it led to me drawing. Like I said, and I said to myself, I'm just going to write and draw my own comic and see if I can do it myself. And that's what I ended up being, the Dead at 17 little black and white mini. I don't know if you're familiar with.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of it.
Yeah, so like I worked on that. Took me about a year because between work and all that other stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I finished it, and then just gave it out. I was working at a comic book store at the time. Kind of gave it out to my favorite customers, and
Oh, excellent.
yeah, and then I kept it in my portfolio, and it kind of sat there for a while until Viper came calling, and
Mm-hmm.
then that kind of led to it becoming a series.
Mm. So, what influences did you have in the comic book industry?
So I would say the biggest probably was Frank Miller, because
Mm.
I know it seems cliche. I think everyone says Frank Miller or Dark Knight Returns, but at the time, my exposure to comic books was limited mainly to Transformers and GI Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the first books I read, and then my impression of superheroes was very much like Super Friends that was
Yeah.
on TV. So I didn't realize that cartoon or comics could be like cool and gritty and all that. So
Yeah.
when Batman came out, I remember like the stores suddenly were stocking lots of Batman books on the shelves.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh wow, like it can be like this, I mean, I was a kid, but I wanted something, more than kid stuff, right? And Dark Knight was just like, wow, I didn't know comics could be like this,
Oh,
So
Dark Knight was fantastic.
yeah,
It's without a doubt one of my favorite Batman stories. It's for that chilling moment where they arrive at the fairground on the hang glider and you see the dead children on the ground because Joker's poisoned them with the cotton candy. And I
mhm,
remember thinking, whoa, because I
right.
don't think I'd ever seen that in comics before. But I love that you said Sin City because you probably can't see them because the motion's blurred. But on the bookshelf there over my shoulder, I've got 4 of the limited edition hardcovers that Frank Miller
Oh,
signed of
nice.
Sin City,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's part of my jewels of my collection because one of them, I think that Yellow Bastard storyline, he only signed 500 of, and I've got number 5, so that's one of my little prizes over there. But yeah, I love Sin City because I've always been a fan of noirish storytelling, and
Mhm.
I get hints of that in your work. Is that fair to say?
Possibly, yeah. I
Mm.
mean, yeah, because like Sin City. Well, the thing about Frank Miller and among others is that one of the things that I realized after a while that I was being drawn to was the writer artist, the,
Mm.
the the creators who it was a singular vision. I mean, like,
Yes.
if you look at like, I know Eastman and Laird, it was a two guys, but they were still writing and drawing
Mm.
turtles, right? And like, that was interesting to me that, um, and I'm trying to think of some others at the time, but that was definitely something that like I realized that without knowing it, that I was being drawn to, you know.
Yeah,
So,
because well, I'm glad you mentioned the singular vision aspect because
mhm,
um, I don't know if you've probably seen this over Twitter or whatever, but modern comics from, in particular, the big two, aren't doing as well as they used to these days,
right.
and a lot of people are gravitating towards manga. And one of the reasons why, which was pointed to me by my local comic shop guy, who's a cool dude, he said it's one of the reasons is you will always get a singular creative vision with manga.
Mhm.
And I thought, yeah, he's absolutely right because I don't think I've ever seen. I mean, unless you can correct me now, like the usual kind of comic book team working on a manga because it's always 1 or 2 people and that's it, which is why you have such a straightforward story, I think. And
Yeah.
we don't have many writer artists out there nowadays.
No, I can't really think of a lot offhand.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go to talk about the first bit of work then, and it's perfect that you've mentioned this, and that is, of course, Desert 17. This is the compendium cover
Right.
that I've got here, and just for the record, I actually did manage to find a copy.
Oh, wow.
And I'll tell you what, it was a great read. But what I found interesting about it was the introduction, which I'll get to the details of shortly. So I've gone and pulled a George Lucas.
Good.
So give me the history of Dead at 17 and then what you mean by that for those who don't know. Because before you get into it, I loved this. I genuinely loved this because this was a hell of a roller coaster over the thing. There's 3 or 4 different books in here. I forget now.
I believe there's 3, yes.
Yeah, three books, and then the wonderful cover gallery at the back. But yeah, you put the characters through the ringer in this, and
Yes.
that's one thing I love about these sorts of stories compared to modern books because even my kids have pointed this out to me that too many characters in modern stories have plot armor. No one's got plot armor in this. So give
Right.
me the history of this up to the George Lucas comment, if you don't mind.
You talk about the series in general before.
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. So, like I said, I got picked up at Viper. They were just starting out. They had actually hired me to draw another book, which didn't work out ultimately. So they said, "Oh, you got that thing in your portfolio. We like that. Let's do that." I was like, "Well, if I'm going to do this, I need to redraw it and give it because this is it was like a prototype. This is
Yeah.
not the final." So they're like, okay, cool. So I did that, and it came out, and it actually just did really well. It put them on the map. It really, for whatever reason, it just like hit at the right time. Got a lot of attention. So I was gonna do 4 issues and move on because I didn't think it was anything. And then they go, oh, this is doing well. So did another series and another series, and then so yeah, that compendium is those first 3 volumes. And I guess when that compendium came out, there were things that I didn't care for in the first story arc because of the circumstances of when Viper put it out. I had to do all the issues within 2 months.
Yeah.
Right, draw, color. This because of the circumstances of getting approved by Diamond and Comic-Con, all kinds of things. Too boring to go into.
Yeah.
So I had only had 2 months to do those 4 issues. So like I was like, there's things I wanted to fix, and that's why I said I pulled it George Lucas, because in this volume I added a couple of pages and fixed some things. So yeah, that's what that meant.
At least a question though, because when I opened it up and looked through it, maybe I'm reaching here, but I didn't notice any credits for anyone else besides you. So am I right in saying that? Let's see, count this right. So you write, you illustrate, you ink, you color,
yes,
you letter.
I didn't letter that book, but I do letter all my stuff now. Yes,
that is a hell of a workload.
It is.
How do you manage that?
Well, I don't have as much of an output as a lot of people because I am just doing. I can manage like maybe 2 books a year, depending on the length. Yeah, it's a lot. It's one of those things where it's like I didn't jump in intending to do all that, but just over time having to learn it because when I started with Viper, I was already penciling and inking, but they were like, these books are in color, and can you color? I was like, I don't know. I guess I'll find out. And so I colored, and then when I moved to Image, it was like, oh, I lost my letter, so I got to start lettering. And then over time, it's just like, well, I'm just doing it all, I guess. So,
how difficult is it to letter, especially your own work? Because there's not many letterers that I know of outside of the mainstream comic industry. So, what's that like?
It's one of those things where it's not necessarily fun, but I find it essential. Like, I am writing still when I'm lettering, even though I may have a complete what I feel is a final script.
Yeah.
Once I'm lettering, I realize, oh, that doesn't work. This needs something else. And I'm constantly rewriting as I'm lettering. So like, if I had a letter, I'd be driving them insane because I'd be constantly sending them edits, and like, it would not be any fun for either one of us. So that's one of the things I kind of feel like I have to do now.
But I'd imagine then that even though it is quite a workload, is it relaxing in a sense because you know what you've got to do in your head, so you've got it all organized up here?
Yeah, I mean, each process is not final. Even though, like I said, I'll do a script that I think, oh, that's perfect, at least as far as I can get it. When I'm drawing it, I find things that I want to change this. I'll change this. Now seeing it physically, I can say, oh, that should be here or whatever. And because each stage is just an evolving process. So like, like I enjoy it. Some parts I enjoy more than others, but at this point, I can't imagine, bringing someone else in. I've become kind of a control freak about it, I guess, because I know exactly how I want it all,
No, I get what you're saying. I suppose you're used to working to a pace that you're comfortable with. Is that fair to say?
Right. Yeah, of course.
All right. So on to the next bit of work then. And this one was where I became aware of you more. And that is, of course, T-Bird and Throttle, because this is from your store.
Okay.
Now, tell me about this project, because I confess that I have not read this, but I'll discuss why at the end.
Okay.
But how did this come about?
This is, if I had to pick a favorite project, just as far as like the way it's come together and the way I envisioned it and the way it's turned out, it's probably my favorite, to be honest. But this was actually going to be the book I did right after Dead at 17 back in 2004. Like I said, I was doing those 4 issues, and I was going to move on to this, and then I wasn't able to, and so I got put on the back burner. and it was going to happen again like in 2000, I think 8. And then something else happened. I could put it back on the back burner again.
Yeah.
So when in 2017, when I finally decided I'm going to go into self-publishing, I said, this is what I want to do. I've been setting on the back burner for too long. So
Yeah.
it's just basically this sort of, I've never been, as a writer creator, I was never like, I enjoy reading superheroes, but I was never driven to create that. But I just happened to have this one idea that I thought was interesting. And so I just stuck with it and kept developing it. And it's just my take on the genre, and has a lot to say about, I think, this a superhero character in a modern world, which I think a lot of movies have now gone on to do. I mean, you've seen it pop up in some of Snyder stuff. You see it in the latest Superman. Just the kind of interaction of social media and the media with being a superhero. That's definitely an aspect of it. But yeah, so this is the first 4 issues. This what you're on the screen. It's the one story arc. It's called T-Bird and Throttle versus the Moon Man is the subtitle. Since then, there's been a second volume called Versus the Ape Men.
Yep.
And there will be, I think, was it 4 more planned arcs. So.
All right. So on to the next one.
Yes.
And where are we? I'll do the Kickstarter first, and then in your store.
Okay.
But Dead at 17 Kill Day.
Yes.
Now, I love reading about Kickstarters like this because, let's see if I bring it. I don't think it'll show it here, but I've got it on my notes that it was 865% funded. Of a $3,000 goal, you received $25,954. Now, for a creator, that's got to feel great.
It does, especially because this was really. I mean, I had done a Kickstarter before, a few years before, but this is really what I consider it my first in a lot of ways. So it was me coming back to the platform after being on Indiegogo for so long. Yes. And I was genuinely surprised by how well it did, because I did this same book on Indiegogo and it did not do near as well. I think one of the reasons that I think the audience who remembers Dead at 17 is primarily on Kickstarter.
Yes.
So this was a 20th anniversary one-shot. Kill Day was. It was meant to be sort of retelling the events of the first issue through a different perspective.
Okay.
But the twist about it was that it was also lays the groundwork for a reboot. It was kind of like a surprise twist at the end of it. So it had sort of served a double function.
Okay. Because I'm just going to bring up the store one now. And yeah, this is it. Different cover, of course. But again, one thing I notice is how reasonably priced a lot of this stuff is on your store. And compared to some of the other folks I've seen who sell stuff privately, so I see this nothing bargain.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I try to keep it as low as I can. I know, some. Ideally, it would be a lot less expensive, but
at the same time, an artist's got to live.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that side of things as well. But one of the things I did after obviously we first started talking was, well, I got to check out this guy's work. And I looked at your store, and so much there has piqued my interest. But we'll get to that shortly. Because this next one is when we first sort of started talking. I'm going to see if you remember this, because I certainly do.
Okay.
Was when you did Black Harvest Remastered.
Yes.
Now, I saw this because you randomly, because obviously the new Twitter ownership, and I'm calling it Twitter, I'm not calling it X because X is a stupid name. I get random tweets from different people just pop up occasionally in my feed, and this came up, the Black Harvest Kickstarter, and I remember typing on it, damn, I'm pissed that I missed this book, because straight away I was drawn to your art. And then, of course, obviously there's the time difference between obviously here in the UK and in the US where you are. I commented on it and I went to bed. and I woke up in the morning for work, and I see that you've replied saying, "I think you've got may have some copies left after fulfillment, and
Yeah.
you would arrange to sell me one." I thought, "Oh, excellent!" And for those wondering, yeah, there it is.
There it is.
So afterwards, yeah, you sent it to me, and before I continue, thank you very much for that. I sincerely appreciate it, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. It's a great sort of combination of drama. I won't do any spoilers, but alien abduction and a bit of the paranormal in there as well.
Right.
But I also know that this is remastered because this came out before.
Yes.
So can you give me a history of Black Harvest and when you decided to remaster it?
Yeah. So this followed. It was, I want to say, maybe after the second or third Dead at 17 series.
Mm-hmm.
This was another publisher at the time called Devil's Due, who reached out to me and wanted to work with me, and so I pitched them this, and they liked it. So, yeah, it was just an idea I had at the time about. I love the concept of mixing sci-fi with the supernatural or uh, religious ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I love just that overlap or the finding the intersection there. So this is where the idea came from for this. Yeah. So what happened is so I did that, and it was 6 issues. Um, Image re-released it a few years later in a trade paperback,
Mm-hmm.
but it's been out of print for a while, and now that I'm republishing my own work, I wanted to have this in my catalog because I didn't have any. It's been out of print, so I was like, well, I'm going to go back to it. I might as well spruce it up and make it, make it something that I'd be proud of. So, yeah, it's the remastered, which it's the same story. I just redid a lot of the art and just kind of remastered a lot of the coloring and stuff. So yeah, it's a story that takes place in the same universe as Dead at 17.
Yeah.
So,
and of course, this is the cover again in Josh's store, for those watching. And of course, the Kickstarter, 359% funded of a $5,000 goal. You got $17,952. Again, for a creator, that's got to feel wonderful. Because essentially, not only are you breathing life into an old work, if you don't mind the saying,
yeah,
but it's also being introduced to a new audience.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Very grateful that it's going well so far. So.
Well, I'll ask this about it first. There's a whole thing nowadays regarding female characters in storytelling.
Yes.
But what I like about Black Harvest, as well as Dead at 17, is that everyone gets put through the ringer. No one is given an easy time.
No.
And nowadays, I mean, how do I put this? If a woman, a character, is seen to sort of get any kind of harm of any kind, there's an uproar, and to me, it ruins storytelling because everyone's got to be treated the same. And
well, yeah, they're not treated like a real character. They're treated as something special, and yeah, they've got to have growth. They got to go through, like you said, the ringer. They got to be faced adversity. They have to hit their lowest point. You got to do all those things for an interesting story arc for a character to one relate to cheer for. Yeah,
absolutely.
So
after we first started talking, one thing that you then did was the Art of Survival.
Yes.
Pin-up art. I love pin-up art. I absolutely love it because it makes me think back to the old days of the swimsuit specials that Marvel used to do and then suddenly stopped doing, I think because everyone got pissy about it. But obviously, I don't know if you've seen, but they're bringing it back now, I assume, because nothing else is selling. But what made you want to do a pin-up special? Just any particular reason, or just because you enjoy the art style so much?
Yeah, it's always been one of those things that's in my wheelhouse. I like drawing, beautiful ladies, and I love pinup art. And this is something that I've built up a collection of art over the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than it just sat there on my hard drive and nothing, thought I might share it with everybody, because I did a series of pinup illustrations for this was a few years ago, not that long ago, but when NFTs were all the rage.
Oh yeah.
It's not that I got involved with NFTs, but I was hired by a company for my art to make NFTs. So I didn't know nothing about it. I was like, well, if you're going to pay me to make art, I guess I'll make some art for you. So that's what a lot of these started as. So I'm glad to finally have them as in actual book form. So,
and for anyone watching the screen, where is it? For a $1,500 goal, is 150% funded, making $3,758. Another fine success.
Well, truthfully, I mean, yes, it funded, but this actually didn't do very well because this was back on Indiegogo.
Yes.
Indiegogo, I noticed, this is one reason I went to Kickstarter, because I noticed a trend of my campaigns doing less and less. So this was sort of my final test to see, and it was definitely my lowest performing. I know it's an art book, not a comic, so I know that makes a difference, but this was, compared to like where I had been, this was a very low performing campaign. So I'm curious how this will do on Kickstarter. So I may bring it over there at some point.
Are you aware of the Fund My Comic website?
I am,
because I know people are starting to use that now, and
right.
I don't know what it would be like for you, obviously, because I don't know what the fees are that each site takes. But I know Indiegogo is less than Kickstarter, and I'm pretty sure that Fund My Comic is less than Indiegogo. So,
right.
Yeah,
it is something that I've considered for sure. I think with the right timing and project, I think I may give it a shot. I don't know. We'll see. I'm glad that option is there, though.
And then to your latest crowdfunder, which has not long concluded, Desert 17 Revival. Yes. Now, you can see obviously in pounds here, because obviously I'm over in the UK, but for those listening, of a $5,000 goal, it received $25,534. Boom. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy.
So what can you tell me about this one without going into major spoilers?
So the genesis of this, real quick, is that I ended Dead at 17 back in 2015. Image, that was the grand finale was at Image. And then after that, I was approached about doing a short film. And then that led to me writing a novel form of the story. And from there, that led to me writing a screenplay. And ultimately, nothing really, major came of any of that stuff. But I was left with all these new ideas. And I was like, well, rather than let them just go to waste, what if I brought back the comic? Because I had this idea of, when I created it at 17, I was in my early 20s. So 17 was not that far off from me. Now I'm approaching 50. 17 is much farther in the rear view.
You and me both.
Yeah. So I was like, would it be more interesting if I came at it where Nara is closer to my age, a little bit younger, like a late 30s, but and she's looking at this in the rear view, like this is something that happened in the past. And I thought that'd be an interesting way to go about it. So this is the beginning of a brand new, for lack of a better word, I don't like this word, but it is what it is, a reboot or revival, as I've named it.
Yeah.
So it's a new take on the story, but it's the same familiar characters, but in a new situation. So if you're brand new to Dead at 17, this is the great place to start. If you've read it before, I think you'll find it interesting to see where the characters are now, how they're different, how they've changed. So yeah, I'm very excited about the story and this version of it. This is going to be one of probably 3 as of right now, for the first arc anyway. So yeah, the campaign did very well. You can still back it, even though it's ended. It is enabled for late pledges, so you can still get in. So yeah.
How far along with you the project at the moment?
Not as far as I'd like. I'm about a third of the way. But I have a release date set for September. So it's going to be a bigger book than Dead at 17 has been in the past. It's going to be 50 plus pages for this first issue.
Excellent.
Yeah. So it's a lot of work for me. I mean, that's 50 pages of writing, drawing, inking, coloring. So
So you got me curious. So
yeah.
what is a typical creative day like for you? I mean, do you get up really, really early, have a small breakfast, and then straight into the work, or is it more of a different pace to that?
I wish I had that kind of discipline, but I'm very much a late starter. I kind of roll into the office. I work mostly later. Just
Oh, night
having
owl.
yes, I
Yeah.
mean, well, I got used to that because having kids, I was just never able to get a lot done during the day. So I kind of just
Mm.
adjusted to working primarily at night. So I like it when it's quiet. And yes, I would look. It's quiet in the morning too. Ideally, I'd love to be that person, but I just cannot get the cylinders going that early. Um, so right now, yes, it is a lot of night work. But I usually get started around noon or after lunch is when I really the gears start going.
Mm.
And then break for dinner, family evening, hang out, and then back to work.
So, how many pages can you get done in the day, given the amount of roles you play in your own work? Because,
Um, I can get 1 page a day done,
Mhm.
ink and colored, if I discipline.
And do you enjoy being completely self-published?
I do. It would be nice to have a publisher who like handled all the marketing and had my back and
Yeah.
took care of all the, that kind of stuff, the business stuff. But I enjoy being my own boss. No one tells me what I can or can't do. That could be good or bad depending on your point of view. I mean, some people, I think, one of the things you hear a lot about in indie comics, especially with crowdfunding, is that you need to hire an editor. You need to have an editor. And well, I don't necessarily agree in principle, but um, I think I'm okay at. I think I know how to write a sentence, how to write a story. I can spell reasonably well. So,
Mm.
I mean, would an editor help? Maybe, but
I've heard differing arguments about it. I've got
yeah.
a friend who, like me, is an indie author, and he put one of his books out, and instead of in one sentence, he was supposed to have written soccer pitch, but instead he wrote soccer bitch and didn't realize it.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, I suppose it's tricky because there are editors out there who, don't get me wrong, I'm sure they're good at their jobs and I wouldn't knock them for anything. But there are some there that are just way too expensive. And
Right.
again, I go back to the part of an artist has to eat. I totally understand that. But to use a metaphor I heard with a fast food company, I'm paying for the drink, I'm not paying for the brewery kind of thing. So you definitely would say you're very confident editing your own work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not perfect. Obviously, I make mistakes, but I mean,
But is it kind of the approach where you'll put it in a drawer for a couple of days, then take it out and look at it with what I've heard described as a cold pair of eyes?
yeah, I mean, look, I'm constantly looking at. I mean, like I said, I'll write it, and I'm writing it again when I'm drawing it, and I'm writing it
Mm,
again when I'm lettering. So like, and of course, I'll just go over it many times. It doesn't mean mistakes don't get through, but at the other end of it, like you were saying, it's like the expense of hiring that. Like, it's funny the demands I see put on comic creators more so than other professions or
yeah.
what about you, because you write like do you get an editor? I mean,
I have used an editor. I mean, I can tell you a story because I wrote a book a long time ago which wasn't successful, but it was a learning curve. And between one of the protagonists and one of the antagonists, there's a knife fight where the bad guy pulls a knife, and I think he said something along the lines of this was in the original draft. I point out he said something along the lines of it's always handy to have one of these. And I wanted the protagonist to say something that would antagonize the guy into making a silly move with the knife. So he says in the original draft, and I'll point out something later on about this. But apologies for anyone who doesn't like this line. But the guy says, "Well, knives are like tampons; only pussies need them." And my editor highlighted that and said, "Look, you probably should change this, otherwise the PC brigade will come after you."
mhm.
Turned out at the start I thought, no, I want to keep it in because I like that line and I think it does what it needs to do. But in the end, I thought, yeah, you know what? He's probably right. I could do without the hassle of this. So I changed it to the guy saying, I've seen toothpicks bigger than that. Now, the irony of that line was it was actually a woman that told me it. But that sort of thing gets lost in the,
Right.
in the discussion. So, yeah, that was one occasion where it helped. But recently, the last book I wrote, a friend of mine who does editing, he read it for me for free. And because he did such a good job with the edits, I said, look, I'm going to use this and I'll credit you as the editor. And he said, oh, well, thank you very much. And that was how that came out. But I understand with comics, it's probably a very different process, of which I've confessed to know little. But I'm always curious to hear this sort of thing because of some of the books I backed. Not many of them list an editor. And one of the ones I read late last year, I say, the writer edited it herself, so she's credited as the writer and editor. So yeah, that was one thing that I was curious about, because again, you to me seem to be the very definition of a one-man band, and I don't see many of those about nowadays.
Yeah, and I think too, like a lot of maybe artists who try to write their stuff, or maybe they haven't done it before, or they haven't a lot of experience doing it. So I think that's where a lot of this hire an editor thing comes from, perhaps, is that you have a lot of people who are, and I understand, I understand being indie, like, because you get to work, because say you're an artist and you don't write, you get to hire a writer, you get to hire, like, all these positions you have to hire, and it's, I don't know how guys do it who have to do more than one job, because like my margins are pretty thin, just me, myself, I've got, because like I know there's different points of view on crowdfunding, but like, to me, it's like, I've seen some people say, oh, you can't use the money for anything but the books. And I was like, well, I consider this my income. So yes, I appoint the portion that goes to the books and I don't touch that. But the rest of it goes to my living expenses, because I have to live while I'm creating the book and while I'm, fulfilling the book and doing everything else that related to that. So like, I don't know why there's this kind of like animosity. I mean, I guess I know why. It's because you have people who have blown the money and have not fulfilled. So
no,
like,
well, I'm glad you've mentioned that, because it is a very good segue into the next point. Because obviously, the first time I remember seeing your work was when I think you did a Kickstarter for T-Bird and Throttle.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, I didn't back it at the time, because I think I was starting to get into that phase of where I was getting very unhappy with the state of crowdfunded comics. There are some out there that are extremely late.
Yes.
And it's gotten to the point now where a lot of other crowdfunded campaigns I've seen are not taking as much, because it does look like these guys have taken the money and gone.
Right.
And I'll bring up this example here, because this is one of the most recent examples. Now, this is the Death Raider graphic novel by a guy called Rob Hunter. Now, where's it? Yeah, so for a $500 goal, he took $32,270. And the book has yet to materialize. And the update he posted was this one here. I'll read parts of it for the listening audience, but he goes, Death Raider campaign was such a financial disaster. I pissed away my savings and 3 years of my life. I couldn't be doing anything else. Crowdfunding is nearly dead. My peers' campaigns totals drop with every new release. I have left comic books for good now and have a very low paying job in manufacturing, which is still higher than my livelihood. Crowdfunding was below the poverty line. Why should you care? The point of crowdfunding is, in theory, to cover my bills while I work and promote the project. This never happened. It was my savings and freelance work that carried Death Raider over the line. Fast forward, where does this leave the book? Either I come to some sort of compromise with my debtors and the book ships in the fall of 2025, or it's bankruptcy and the printing and shipping funds are confiscated. Now, it pissed a lot of people off. And I remember having a conversation with the guy, because he was trying to get me to back it when it was a year late. And when I pointed this out to him, he said it was still coming. And then I pointed out, but you've taken this much money for it. How is it this late? And I can't remember what he said, but he's basically nuked his Twitter since then.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got other crowdfunding campaigns out there that have taken lots, they're years late. It looks like there's no sign of fulfilling. And there was even one, the book was called Sovereign. And this guy took basically about 40 grand US, I think. And the book's never appeared.
Mm.
And I'm curious what you think on the whole thing without wishing to drag you into the online drama, because that's part of the problem with this. The idiots that spend hours on YouTube and on Twitter as opposed to drawing the bloody book and getting it out on time.
Yeah.
Because it was one thing my friends and I, when we were discussing you are barely on Twitter except to post campaign updates, brief comments here or there, answer questions as you have done with me, but you get the books out and on time. And for someone like me who appreciates that, it means the absolute world, because especially since I've discovered your store, which I'll highlight shortly, I will be coming back for more. So I'm just curious what your take is on the whole thing, because especially with regards to the Comicsgate movement, initially I was very supportive of it because I'm an independent creator and I believe in independent creation a lot more than I do the mainstream stuff, because I think it's where the magic is. But nowadays with these guys, I will not look at 98% of them, except for two. One I actually know in person, and the other I'm a fan of. But I won't touch anything else of it because I'm burned out. So what's your take on the whole thing? Because especially what you just said about paying bills, do you have a job on the side, or is this your full-time work?
This is my full-time work. I've been doing this since 2004. So yeah, it's tough. It's not for the faint-hearted, for sure. But 32 grand this comic raised was more than I've gotten on a campaign. So to me, there's no excuse. I don't know why he wasn't able to. I know things happen, but this doesn't sound like things happen. This sounds like it just was careless what he wrote. But look, it's very frustrating as someone who's been doing this, as long as I have. When you have people, I'm trying to be delicate.
No, I appreciate that.
I
appreciate it's perhaps a provocative question, because I don't wish to drag you into the whole thing, but as someone who's kept on track, I am curious.
Yeah, I definitely have plenty of thoughts on it. It's just because I am aware of all the drama, unfortunately, and it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, people will say, I'm not including you in this, by the way, because I know you. But some people will say, "Oh, we're tired of the drama," but then they reward the people who make the drama. And see it over and over again. It's like, well, I'm here. I'm not causing any waves as far as that goes, and it's still a struggle for me to get eyes on my stuff. And it's because, look, I'm not a personality. Like I don't have that gift where I'm a natural broadcast. Some people have that gift. They're an entertainer. I don't. All my talent is into creating my stories. So I'm not I'm not engaging as far like some of these people are. But I think it's become a detriment because people are rewarding personalities over content.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
Yeah, and so you're getting less than stellar work if you're getting the work at all. And it is frustrating to see some campaigns make this kind of money and then not deliver, when I'm like, wow, what could I do with that kind of money? So I don't know, man. It's just, yeah, like I said, like I understand the genesis of the movement, and I still am sympathetic to the customers who feel this way and want certain types of books. But as far as the creator hashtag movement, I want nothing to do with, because it's a lot of people who are just, for lack of a better word, assholes.
No, sorry, carry on.
Oh no, and they've never made me feel welcome or part of this. Not that I was looking for it, but like I was always on the outs because I would not pledge allegiance to any kind of hashtag. I'm like, if you appreciate my work, I'm here to deliver my work, but I'm not going to give voice to a movement or anything like that, because that's for the customer to decide, in my opinion. Like, if you see something in my work that you appreciate that's different than what you're seeing in the mainstream, I'm here to deliver that to you. but I'm not going to pledge allegiance to any one person or a hashtag or any of that. But I'm here to serve the customer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. I mean,
Mm.
it's a frustration for me, and I know plenty of others, when you see them on YouTube for like doing their streams, which again I appreciate is part of their job, I suppose. But they're on there for like 3-4 hours, always on Twitch, and I had an exchange with one of them because I backed his book, but it was 4 years late, and it's still sitting in the box over my shoulder because I lost interest in it. And I commented on this in someone else's tweet, and even though I never tagged the guy, he decided to answer me back, and he said, "Why don't you just read it? Why are you so mad?" And I was a bit surprised at the response, and I said again, I really didn't want to get involved in this. I said, "Look, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. Get off YouTube, get off social media, and finish your damn book." And he never responded. But at the same time, I am pleased with the fact that creators like yourselves are successful, carving out your own little corner of the market for an art style and a story style, which I really love, by the way.
Thank you.
I wasn't sure what I was expecting when I got Black Harvest, but first of all, the cover, but also for those who can see it, it's a thick book. This is a good read. So at least I know that when I back your stuff, I'm going to be getting more of this, because I will be coming back with T-Bird and Throttle, that for sure. But before I finish off with my usual questionnaire, after obviously this Desert 17 Kickstarter, what's next for you?
Coming up next, immediately after this, when I finish this book, is doing a crossover with a creator named Dan Mendoza. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, he's made quite a name for himself on Kickstarter with Zombie Tramp and among other books. Dan's always been very nice to me. He's been a fan of mine and been very generous with me.
I like his art style.
Yeah, and so he reached out to me a couple years ago and was like, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing licensing out for crossovers. Would you be interested?" And I was like, I wasn't sure because I didn't know if our worlds really compatible. Even though I respect Dan immensely, so I thought about it. And I eventually kind of came up with an idea that I thought would be an interesting way in. And like I said, Dan's been very generous to me. He's had me out to his convention. Had a great time there. And so, yes, that will be the next thing I do. It's a Dead of 17 Zombie Tramp crossover, which will be very interesting and fun. Following that, it will either be Dead of 17 Revival 2 or a new T-Bird and Throttle. I haven't 100% decided, but it'll be one of those.
I'm very much looking forward to it.
So
we'll finish off with the usual, the Pivo questionnaire, which I do as a little laugh with the guests. It's my tribute to the late, great James Lipton and the Inside the Actors Studio, which was one of my favorite interview programs. So, Josh, what is your favorite word?
Favorite word?
This has tripped up a few of my guests, by the way.
Well, apparently, I mean, what people comment on that I say a lot is good grief. The Charlie Brown catchphrase. I say quite a bit.
Fair enough. I like that.
Yeah.
What is your least favorite word?
I hate a lot of food-related words like casserole and potluck. I don't know why. A lot of food-related words I do not like.
What turns you on?
I love action figures.
I can see that.
I love physical representations of things I love.
What turns you off?
The aforementioned drama farming YouTubers.
No, very good. What is your favorite curse word?
Oh man. Favorite curse word. I don't know. I don't like to cuss.
I've noticed that you haven't cursed once since this discussion.
Well, I think I said a-hole, but no,
Well, that's
but
mild.
yeah, I don't know. I don't like any of them. I don't like saying them, but I do say
Well,
them.
we'll go with a-hole because that's the
Okay.
only one I've heard
All
you
right.
say.
All right.
All right. What sound or noise do you like?
What was that?
What sound or noise do you like?
Oh, what sound or noise do I like? I like I get this from David Lynch, I think. I love the sound of electricity.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Um I hate the sound of coughing.
What profession other than yours would you like to attempt?
Filmmaking, whether it's directing or screenwriting.
What profession other than yours would you absolutely not like to attempt?
A waiter.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Not bad.
I like it. I like it. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can find Josh's works for sale on his website, which I'm sharing now. Quite a selection here. And I love the fact that several of them say sold out on them. And you can also find him usually on Kickstarter, sometimes on Indiegogo with his latest projects. I believe Dead at 17, as we said, is still available to be backed on Kickstarter at this moment in time. So get on that if you haven't already. Josh, thank you so much for giving me your time today. I really do appreciate it. And like I said, I will be back with more of your stuff, and I wish you the most absolute best with your projects going forward. I really do.
Thank you. I had a really great time. Thank you for the interview. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all. All right, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and we'll see you next time. So bye-bye for now.